The letter had my name on it before I ever knew he existed. That was the first thing I remember thinking, standing alone in the east wing of the Cross mansion with rain crawling down the windows and a dead man's desk open beneath my trembling hands. My name, written in faded black ink across a cream envelope that looked older than some of the secrets in that house. Claire Bennett. Not Miss Bennett. Not Claire. My full name, careful and deliberate, like whoever wrote it had been afraid one wrong stroke might change my life. I was 26 years old, a document restoration assistant from Boston, the kind of woman people forgot 2 seconds after asking for directions. I spent my days breathing in paper dust, repairing cracked bindings, lifting stains from old letters no one alive still remembered writing. Quiet work. Safe work. The kind of work I chose because old paper could not lie to you unless someone powerful had paid to make it. The Cross estate sat 40 minutes outside the city, behind iron gates and a driveway, so long my rideshare driver asked twice if I was sure this was the right address. The mansion was all stone, glass, and cold yellow light, perched on a hill above the Hudson like it had been built to watch the world without joining it. Inside, everything whispered money. Marble floors, oil paintings, fresh flowers in crystal bowls, men in dark suits standing near doors they never opened, speaking into tiny earpieces and looking at me like I was both harmless and already accounted for. Mrs. Vale, the house manager, met me in the foyer wearing pearls and a smile that never reached her eyes. She told me Mr. Cross wanted the private family archive cataloged before the end of the week. No photographs, no phone calls, no wandering beyond the library and restoration room. Her voice stayed polite, but every rule landed like a lock clicking shut. I should have left then. I almost did. But the payment was more than I made in 3 months, and my apartment lease was due, and my mother used to say pride was beautiful until rent came knocking. So I stayed. For 6 hours, I worked under a green banker's lamp while thunder rolled over the roof. I sorted deeds, shipping records, old invitations, death notices, and letters sealed with wax the color of dried wine. Nothing about Ethan Cross appeared directly, but his presence lived in every room. Staff lowered their voices when his name came up. Security straightened when his car lights swept across the courtyard around midnight. Even the house seemed to hold its breath for him. I had not met him yet. I only knew what the city knew. Ethan Cross owned restaurants, hotels, galleries, and enough silence to make reporters choose safer stories. People called him a businessman in public and something darker when they thought no one was listening. At 1:17 a.m., I found the drawer. It was built into the underside of an antique mahogany desk in the locked archive room, hidden behind a loose brass plate. I noticed it because the wood grain did not match. Restorers notice small lies. That is our curse. The drawer opened with a soft scrape, like it had been waiting years to exhale. Inside was one envelope, a silver key, and a photograph turned face down. I touched the envelope first. I wish I had not. The paper felt fragile, but my name on it felt alive. My mouth went dry. My hands forgot how to be steady. I told myself there were other Claire Bennetts. Hundreds, probably. Thousands. But beneath my name was a date written in the same black ink. 18 years earlier. The year my mother died. The year my childhood became a hallway of closed doors and adults who changed the subject whenever I asked what happened before Boston. I should have put the letter back. I should have closed the drawer, packed my tools, walked past the men in suits, and never looked behind me. Instead, I slid one finger under the flap. The envelope opened too easily, as if it had never truly been sealed. The first line was not addressed to me. It said, "Margaret, I did what you asked, but one day your daughter will hate me for saving her." My breath stopped, so suddenly the room tilted. Margaret was my mother's name. Margaret Bennett. A woman I remembered in pieces, vanilla hand lotion, soft humming, a blue scarf at the train station, her hand letting go of mine. I read the line again. Then again. The words did not change. They only sank deeper. Somewhere beyond the library doors, footsteps moved through the hall. Slow. Certain. Coming closer. I folded the letter back with clumsy fingers, but it was too late. The door opened behind me, and the air changed before I turned around. I knew it was him before anyone said his name. Ethan Cross stood in the doorway in a black suit damp from the rain, his face pale under the gold light, his gray eyes fixed not on me, but on the letter in my hand. For one terrible second, He looked less like a man who ruled the city and more like a man watching the past rise from the grave. Then he spoke, low and almost broken. You were never supposed to find that. I did not move. Neither did he. The only sound in the room was rain ticking against the tall windows and the soft hum of the old lamp above the desk. Ethan Cross stood in the doorway like the house itself had given him shape. Black suit. Wet hair brushed back from his forehead. One hand resting at his side, perfectly still. Behind him, two men waited in the hall, but he lifted two fingers without looking, and they stepped back out of sight. No argument. No question. Just obedience, so quiet it scared me more than shouting would have. My fingers tightened around the letter. This has my name on it, I said, though my voice sounded too small for the room. His eyes finally left the envelope and rose to my face. Gray. Cold at first. Then not cold at all. That was the worst part. I had expected anger from a man like him. I had expected threats, orders, maybe that polished kind of cruelty rich men used when they knew the world would forgive them. But what I saw in his expression was something else. Recognition. Regret. A pain so old it had learned to stand upright. Put it down, Miss Bennet, he said. Miss Bennet. Formal. Distant. Like my full name had not been hiding in his desk for 18 years. Why? I asked. Because you do not know what you are holding. Then explain it. His jaw tightened. A small movement, but the room felt it. That is not a request you should make lightly. I let out a shaky laugh, the kind that comes when fear has nowhere else to go. My mother's name is in this letter. My name is on the envelope. I think I passed lightly about 5 minutes ago. For a moment, he looked almost impressed. Then the expression disappeared behind that smooth, controlled mask the city probably knew better than his real face. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Not slammed. Closed. Softly. Carefully. Like even the door had to obey his mood. The click made my spine go stiff. Do not lock me in here, I said. I have not locked anything. You do not have to. People like you make rooms feel locked. His eyes moved over me, not in a way that made me feel exposed, but in a way that made me feel studied. Cataloged. Protected and trapped at the same time. People like me, he repeated. Men who hide letters in secret drawers, I said. Men who know dead women and living strangers and pretend that is normal. Something flickered across his face when I said dead women. I saw it before he could bury it. The letter trembled in my hand. I hated that he noticed. I hated more that his voice softened when he spoke again. Margaret would not have wanted you in this room. My breath caught. Hearing him say her name was different from reading it. On his tongue, my mother became real in a way she had not been since I was 8 years old. Not a framed photograph. Not a whispered family tragedy. A person. Known. Remembered. Maybe mourned. How did you know her? I asked. Claire. It was the first time he said my first name, and it landed between us like something forbidden. Not gentle. Not harsh. Careful. As if he had practiced not saying it for years and failed only now. I took one step back, hitting the edge of the desk. Do not say my name like that. His eyes darkened. Like what? Like it hurts you. The silence after that was so deep I heard the rainwater sliding down the glass. He looked away first. Ethan Cross, the man everyone in that house feared breathing near, looked away from me. You should leave the letter and go back to your hotel, he said. Mrs. Vale will arrange a car. No, his attention snapped back. No. You heard me. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. But anger had found me now, bright and shaking. You do not get to keep my mother in a drawer and send me away with a car service. He took one slow step closer. The lamplight cut across his face, turning him half gold, half shadow. There are truths that do not set people free, Claire. They bury them. That sounds convenient for the person holding the shovel. His mouth pressed into a thin line, but he did not deny it. That frightened me more than any denial could have. From the hallway came a low knock. Ethan did not turn. Not now. A woman's voice answered through the door, nervous and tight. Sir, the guests are asking whether you will return. Guests. The private dinner. The men in dark suits. The quiet money moving beneath chandeliers while my pass sat open under my hands. Ethan kept his eyes on me. Tell them I am unavailable. Yes, sir. Footsteps faded. I looked down at the letter again. 1 page. Maybe 2. Thin paper. Heavy enough to tilt the world. I am reading it, I said. His face changed so quickly I almost missed it. The mask cracked. Not fully. just enough to reveal the man underneath, standing in the ruins of a choice he had made before I was old enough to understand loss. "If you read the rest," he said, voice low, "you will never look at me the same way again." I swallowed hard. Maybe I should finally see you clearly. I unfolded the letter before courage could leave me. Ethan stayed where he was, 3 feet away, close enough that I could feel the pressure of his attention, but far enough to prove he was choosing restraint. That choice unsettled me more than if he had reached for the paper. Men like him were not supposed to wait. They were supposed to take. The first page shook in my hands, and the ink blurred until I blinked hard enough to make my eyes burn. "Margaret, I did what you asked, but one day your daughter will hate me for saving her. She is safe tonight. The Bennett name will hold. Boston will hold. I have placed enough distance between her and my family that even my father believes the trail went cold in Albany." I stopped. Reading. My throat closed. Albany. I had heard that name once, when I was 12, whispered by my aunt in the kitchen after she thought I had gone to bed. She said Albany like a mistake someone had buried under fresh paint. When I asked about it the next morning, she told me I had dreamed it. I looked up at Ethan. He did not move. His eyes were fixed on the letter, but his face had gone still in a way that felt practiced. "Albany," I said. "Why would your father look for me in Albany?" His jaw tightened. "Keep reading." I hated him for saying it. I hated that he already knew what came next. I lowered my eyes. She asked me to promise that Claire would never grow up inside our world. Not as a witness. Not as a bargaining piece. Not as another child taught to fear footsteps after midnight. Margaret believed there was still mercy in me. I do not know if she was right. I only know that when Claire cried in the back seat and asked whether her mother was coming, I lied because the truth would have broken something no child should lose. The room disappeared. The desk. The lamp. The rain. All of it pulled away until I was standing inside one memory I had never trusted. A car seat. A dark window. My own small hands clutching a blue scarf. A young voice in the front seat telling me to count the lights on the bridge. I had told myself for years that memory belonged to a dream. Children make stories to survive blank spaces. That was what every therapist had said. But the letter had found the blank space and written his name across it. "It was you," I whispered. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the control was back, but thinner now. "You were 8. My laugh came out broken. I know how old I was. "You were scared." Of course I was scared. The words rose too fast. My mother was gone. Everyone told me there was an accident. Everyone told me I was confused. And now I am standing in your house reading that some 16-year-old heir to a family I had never heard of put me in a car and erased my life. His face tightened at the word erased. Good. I wanted something to land. I wanted him to feel 1 inch of the floor falling out from under me. "I did not erase you," he said quietly. "I hid you." That is a beautiful word for stealing the truth. He looked down, not in shame exactly. Something heavier. Something that had lived with him longer than I had known his name. I forced myself to read more, because stopping now felt like drowning inches from the surface. She sang when she was afraid. "You told me that, Margaret." She kept asking for the Lighthouse song. I did not know the words, so I hummed until she fell asleep. If she remembers anything, let it be the song and not the men outside the station. Let it be your voice and not mine. My knees weakened. I gripped the desk to stay upright. The Lighthouse song. My mother's song. No one knew about that. Not my aunt. Not my teachers. Not the grief counselor with her soft cardigans and careful questions. I had never told anyone because the song was not a fact. It was a feeling. Warmth at the edge of sleep. Fingers brushing hair from my forehead. A promise whispered into the dark. Ethan watched my face change, and something in him seemed to give way. "Claire," he said. This time I did not tell him to stop. I held up the letter between us like it was proof of a crime and a prayer at the same time. My voice came out barely above the rain. "How did you know she called me her little lighthouse?" The question did something to him. I saw it in the way his shoulders lowered by a fraction, as if a weight he had carried for 18 years had finally found the one place it was allowed to fall. Ethan looked past me toward the rain-streaked windows, and for a moment, the man in the black suit vanished. What remained was someone younger. Someone trapped in a night that had never ended. "Because she said it to you in the car," he answered. "You were crying. She was trying not to. She kept touching your hair and telling you that even when the shore disappeared, little lighthouses still remembered how to shine." My chest tightened so hard I pressed the letter against it. That sentence lived inside me, not as language, as warmth, as loss, as the one piece of my mother time had never managed to take. You were there, I said. Not after, not later. There. He nodded once. Yes. The word was quiet, but it broke something open. My vision blurred. I turned away before he could see my face collapse, but there was nowhere to go. The archive room suddenly felt too small, packed with old paper, old money, old lies. I moved toward the door. Ethan shifted, not blocking me exactly, but making the exit feel like a question he already knew the answer to. Move, I said. Claire, move. His eyes flicked to the hallway, and I followed the glance. Two security men stood beyond the glass panels, still as statues. Farther down, Mrs. Vale spoke into a phone with her back turned, her pearl earrings catching the chandelier light. The mansion was awake now, quietly awake. The kind of quiet that meant decisions had already been made without me. You are not keeping me here, I said. I am keeping you breathing. That sounds like a threat. It is not. Then open the front door. He said nothing. The silence answered for him. Anger rose in me so fast it steadied my hands. I pushed past him into the hallway, and this time he let me. My shoes struck the polished floor too loudly. Every step echoed under the high ceiling. The house smelled like rain, candle wax, and expensive wood polish. Beautiful. Suffocating. I reached the grand staircase and saw that the men who had been posted near the entrance were now standing closer together. Not aggressive. Not touching me. Just present. A wall made of manners and tailored suits. Miss Bennet, Mrs. Vale called carefully. The weather has made the roads unsafe. I almost laughed. The weather. Ethan came up behind me, slow enough not to startle me, close enough that his voice carried only to me. There are people in this house tonight who would recognize your mother's name. My hand tightened around the railing. Then send them away. I am trying. You are trying to control me. I have controlled entire rooms to keep your name out of them. I turned on him. The chandelier light sharpened the angles of his face, but it did not hide the exhaustion in his eyes. Do you hear yourself? You talk like my life is a file you locked in a cabinet. For 18 years, that file stayed closed, and you stayed safe. Safe is not the same as free. The words landed between us. I watched them hit him, not like an insult, like a verdict. For the first time since he walked into the archive, Ethan Cross looked truly afraid. Not of me. For me. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, and all the softness left his face. The mask returned so cleanly it chilled me. Go back to the East Wing, he said. Now. No, Claire, listen to me. I am done listening to men who explain my life after stealing the truth from it. He stepped closer, then stopped himself, as if touching me would make him know better than the things he had spent years keeping away. His voice dropped until it was barely louder than the rain. You can hate me after sunrise. Tonight, I need you alive. The front doors opened before I could answer. Cold air swept through the foyer, carrying rain and the sound of tires on wet gravel. Every guard in the hall straightened. Ethan turned toward the entrance, his body going still in that terrifying, controlled way. I looked past him and saw 3 guests step inside, smiling like they belonged there. Then the tallest man removed his gloves, looked directly at me, and said my mother's name. The sound of my mother's name in a stranger's mouth made the whole foyer tilt. Margaret, not Mrs. Bennet, not some distant formal version. Margaret, spoken with the familiarity of someone who had kept her buried in conversation for years and suddenly decided to dig. Ethan moved before I could breathe. Not toward the man. Toward me. 1 step sideways, calm and precise, placing himself between my body and the open doors without touching me. The tall guest smiled, as if that small movement entertained him. He was older than Ethan by at least 20 years, with silver hair, a navy overcoat darkened by rain, and pale eyes that traveled over me like he was comparing my face to a memory. Behind him, 2 younger men stood under the portico, shaking rain from their sleeves, pretending not to watch every corner of the room. Nathaniel, Ethan said. His voice had changed. It was not loud. It did not need to be. The staff seemed to disappear without moving, each person finding a wall, a doorway, a reason to lower their eyes. You were not expected until tomorrow. Nathaniel Cross removed his other glove with terrible patience. Cross. I knew it before anyone said it. Same posture. Same cold elegance. Same ability to make a beautiful room feel feel like it had lost oxygen. But where Ethan carried silence like a shield, this man wore it like a crown. Plans change, Nathaniel said. Especially when old names return to my house. My house. The words slid under my skin. Ethan's jaw tightened. This is my house. Nathaniel's smile did not move. Legally, perhaps. His eyes found me again over Ethan's shoulder. But blood has a longer memory than paperwork. I took one step back and felt the staircase railing press into my palm. The letter was still in my hand, folded too tightly now, the edges biting into my fingers. Nathaniel noticed. Of course he noticed. His gaze dropped to the paper, then lifted to my face with a softness that felt rehearsed. You look like her, he said. Not entirely. Margaret had a steadier chin. But the eyes are hers. I wanted to speak. To ask who he was to my mother. To ask why her name moved through this house like a forbidden prayer. But my voice would not come. Ethan answered for me. Do not speak to her. Nathaniel looked at his son then, and the smile vanished. Still giving orders you cannot afford? The air tightened. No one moved. Rain blew across the threshold until one of the guards quietly closed the front doors, sealing us all inside with the storm. Ethan did not look away from his father. She is leaving. No, I said before I understood I had spoken. Both men turned to me. Ethan's eyes warned me not to step into the space between them, but I was done being moved around like a secret wrapped in tissue paper. My hand lifted, and the folded letter shook in the chandelier light. Not until someone tells me what my mother was doing here. Nathaniel tilted his head. She never told you? She died when I was 8. His expression changed. Just slightly. Not grief. Not surprise. Satisfaction, maybe. The kind that made my stomach turn cold. Yes, he said. That was always the story. Ethan's voice cut through the room. Enough. But one word had already found me. Story. My mother's death was not being spoken of as an event. It was being spoken of as an arrangement. I looked at Ethan. What does he mean? Ethan's control slipped. I saw it in his eyes, a flash of something raw and desperate. Claire, not here. Then where? My voice rose, echoing under the ceiling. Where is the correct place to learn that every adult in my life built a wall around a lie? Nathaniel stepped farther into the foyer, and Ethan's hand lifted slightly, not touching me, not touching him, but changing the entire room's balance. The older man stopped. His smile returned, thinner now. Margaret Bennett was many things, Nathaniel said. A mother, a bookkeeper, a woman with unfortunate courage. Bookkeeper. The word struck some hidden bell in my memory. My mother at the kitchen table with ledgers open. My mother closing a drawer when I entered. My mother whispering into the phone. Not near Claire. The past did not arrive gently. It came in fragments with sharp edges. I backed away from both of them and turned toward the west hallway, where dozens of framed photographs lined the wall. I did not know why I went there. Maybe the house pulled me. Maybe my mother did. Ethan said my name behind me, low and urgent, but I kept walking until one photograph stopped me. A younger Margaret stood beside a black car in the courtyard, her blue scarf bright against a gray morning. Beside her was a boy of 16 with Ethan's eyes. And at the edge of the frame, half hidden by shadow, was a little girl clutching her mother's hand. Me. I stared at the photograph until the frame blurred. The little girl was turned slightly away, her face half hidden against my mother's coat, but I knew the posture. One shoulder raised when frightened. One hand gripping fabric like the world might vanish if I let go. I had spent 18 years believing my earliest memories were unreliable, soft things shaped by grief and childhood imagination. But there I was, small and real, standing in the courtyard of the Cross Mansion beside a boy who had grown into the man now standing behind me. Ethan did not speak. Neither did Nathaniel. The silence told me they both knew the photo existed. They both knew what it proved. My fingers touched the glass over my mother's face. She looked younger than I remembered, but tired in the eyes, the way women look when they have already decided to be brave and no bravery will cost them. She worked for you, I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone standing several feet outside my body. Nathaniel answered before Ethan could. She managed accounts for several of our legitimate companies. Legitimate. The word landed too cleanly. Too practiced. She was a bookkeeper, I said. She was exceptional, Nathaniel replied. Careful. Loyal for a time. Ethan's voice cut in, low and warning. Do not rewrite her. Nathaniel glanced at him with mild irritation. as if his son had interrupted dinner conversation instead of the collapse of my life. I am stating facts. You are choosing the ones that make you sound clean. The hallway seemed to narrow around us. I looked from one cross man to the other, seeing the shape of something I did not yet understand. What did she find? I asked. Ethan's eyes came to mine. There was no mask now, only exhaustion. Ledgers that connected my father's private accounts to men who were not supposed to exist on paper. Business partners, Nathaniel said smoothly. Liabilities, Ethan corrected. People who used favors like chains. I pressed the letter tighter against my chest. And my mother wanted to expose it. Your mother wanted out, Ethan said. For herself. For you. She copied records, hid them, and told my father she would give them to federal investigators if he did not let her disappear. The word disappear filled the hallway like cold smoke. My mother had not been weak. She had not simply been unlucky. She had stood inside this beautiful, suffocating house and tried to carve a door through it with paper and courage. I swallowed hard. Then why did everyone tell me it was an accident? Ethan looked toward the photograph, toward the boy he used to be. Because that was the only version that kept you invisible. Invisible to whom? I asked, though my eyes had already moved to Nathaniel. The older man folded his gloves together, patient as a judge in a courtroom he owned. Child, the world your mother stepped into was more complicated than she understood. Do not call me child. My voice came sharper than I expected. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Interest. He saw Margaret in me, and I hated that it pleased him. Ethan stepped closer, not between us this time, but beside me. The difference mattered. After Margaret left that night, people started looking for the records, he said. Not just my father's people. Others. Men with money, influence, connections. If they found you, they would have used you to find what she hid. My stomach turned. I was 8. That is why she came to me. The words were so quiet I almost missed them. I looked at him. To you? Ethan nodded once. She did not trust anyone else in this house. I was young enough to still hate what my family was becoming and old enough to have access to cars, guards, schedules, doors. His eyes darkened with memory. She gave me the blue scarf and told me if anything went wrong, I was to get you across the bridge and never bring you back. I looked down at the photograph again. The blue scarf. My mother's scarf. The one from my dreams. The one I had believed I invented because grief needed color. Did something go wrong? I asked. Ethan's face tightened. Nathaniel turned toward the window, his reflection pale in the dark glass. For once, he had nothing polished to say. Ethan answered me without looking away. Everything went wrong. The air left my lungs. I wanted details and feared them at the same time. I wanted truth, but truth had teeth even when no one spoke of blood. Where are the records now? I whispered. Nathaniel's head turned back slowly. Ethan's hand closed around the banister, his knuckles pale. Only then did I understand. They had not kept me hidden because of what my mother knew. They had kept me hidden because they believed she had given it to me. Ethan reached for the photograph frame, lifted it from the wall, and turned it over. Taped to the back was a small brass key, dark with age. My mother's handwriting curved beneath it on a strip of paper. For my little lighthouse, when the House of Wolves remembers her name. I looked at the brass key in Ethan's hand, and the hallway seemed to breathe around it. Small, tarnished, ordinary enough to disappear in a junk drawer. Yet Nathaniel Cross stared at it like it could pull his whole empire down by the roots. Ethan closed his fingers around it before his father could take a step. No, he said. One word. Quiet. Final. Nathaniel's face did not change, but the temperature of the hallway seemed to drop. Careful, son. Ethan's eyes stayed on him. I have been careful for 18 years. The sentence moved through me like a door opening in a dark house. 18 years. Not one night. Not one childhood favor. Not one letter hidden and forgotten. 18 years of my life had unfolded under the shadow of choices I never knew he was making. What does the key open? I asked. Ethan looked at me then, and I saw the answer heard him before he said it. A safe in the East Archive. Nathaniel gave a short, humorless laugh. Your mother always was sentimental. Dangerous habit. I turned on him, anger cutting through the fear. Do not talk about her like she was foolish for trusting love over power. His pale eyes sharpened. For one breath, I thought he might answer harshly, but Ethan stepped closer to me. Not in front this time. Beside, shoulder to shoulder. The change was small. It steadied me anyway. We go now, Ethan said. All of us? Nathaniel asked. Not you. The older man smiled again, but it looked thinner under the chandelier light. You cannot shut me out of my own history. Ethan's hand tightened around the key. Watch me. Mrs. Vale appeared at the end of the hall, silent and pale. Ethan gave her a look, and she understood without a word. The house began moving around us, doors closing softly, staff fading from sight, the private dinner dissolving into polite excuses. No shouting, no chaos, just power rearranging itself in silence. I followed Ethan back through the long corridor to the east wing, the letter pressed against my chest. Every portrait watched us pass. Every polished surface reflected a version of me I barely recognized. The quiet restoration assistant was gone. In her place was a woman holding her mother's last map. Inside the archive, Ethan slid the brass key into a lock hidden behind the lower shelf of the mahogany desk. It turned with a reluctant click. A narrow panel opened, revealing a small steel box and a bundle of envelopes tied with blue ribbon. My mother's ribbon, the same shade as the scarf in the photograph. My fingers shook when I reached for the top envelope. Ethan did not stop me. This one had no address, only my initials written in black ink. CB. I opened it slowly. Inside were copies of records, names, dates, account numbers, and a photograph of a storage facility in Vermont. Beneath them was another page in Ethan's handwriting. Claire, if this ever reaches you, then I failed at keeping the past buried, but maybe I succeeded at keeping you alive long enough to choose what to do with it. I sat down because my legs could not hold me anymore. The chair creaked under me. Ethan stood across the desk, still as stone, while I read the rest. He had arranged the scholarship that paid for my last 2 years of college. He had bought my old apartment building through a shell company when the landlord tried to sell it and kept my rent from doubling. He had paid for my aunt's medical bills the year she told me an anonymous charity had stepped in. He had sent restoration work my way under different names, always from a distance, always invisible. My life had not been easy, but every time it should have collapsed completely, some unseen hand had held one beam in place. My throat burned. Every scholarship, I whispered. Every apartment. Every second chance. Ethan looked away, but not before I saw the damage my words did to him. It was you. He did not deny it. He did not ask for gratitude. He only stood there with 18 years of silence between us and said, I promised your mother you would get to become yourself. For a long time, I could not answer him. The archive room felt different now, as if the walls had shifted while I was reading. The same shelves stood around us. The same green lamp glowed over the desk. The same rain pressed silver lines against the windows, but nothing belonged to the life I had walked in with. I had entered this house as a hired restorer, a woman paid to repair other people's damaged paper. Now I sat with my mother's hidden records in my lap and realized I had been the thing everyone had been trying to preserve. Ethan stood across from me with his hands at his sides, not defending himself, not reaching for the letters, not asking me to understand. That almost made it worse. I wanted him to be arrogant. I wanted him to sound like the monster the city whispered about. It would have been easier to hate him if he had claimed ownership over my survival. Instead, he looked at me like a man waiting for a sentence he had already accepted. You should have told me, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. When I turned 18. When I graduated. When my aunt died. Any time. His eyes lowered at my aunt's name. I know. Do you? I stood too quickly, and the chair scraped against the floor. Because you were there for everything and nowhere for all of it. You paid bills. You moved pieces. You opened doors I thought I had earned on my own. You did earn them. Do not make this gentle. He took the words like he deserved them. Maybe he did. I am not trying to. I held up the page with his handwriting. You say you wanted me to become myself. How was I supposed to do that when half of myself was locked in your desk? The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of every year I had spent feeling alone in rooms where some invisible mercy had already passed through before me. Ethan looked toward the window, and the reflection in the dark glass made him seem split in two. The man who controlled the city. The boy who had driven a crying child across a bridge because her mother asked him to. I thought distance was the kindest thing I could give you, he said. I thought if you never knew my name, you would never have to carry it. I laughed once, and tears came with it before. I could stop them. You do not get to decide what I carry. His face changed at that. Not pain this time. Understanding. Slow and brutal. No, he said. I do not. The admission stole some of my anger because it did not fight me. It simply stood there, honest and late. From somewhere deep in the house, a door closed. Nathaniel was still here. His people were still here. The records still mattered. The danger had not vanished because my heart was breaking in a beautiful room. Ethan glanced toward the hall, and I saw the calculation return, but softer now, shaped around my choice instead of over it. There is a car waiting behind the service entrance, he said. Mrs. Vale can take you to the county sheriff's office. The records can go with you. I will not stop you. I stared at him. And you? I will stay. To do what? His mouth tightened. To make sure no one follows. There it was again. Protection dressed as sacrifice. A habit so old he did not even hear how lonely it sounded. I looked down at the blue ribbon, at my mother's handwriting, at the proof that she had been brave enough to leave me truth even when everyone else buried it. Then I looked at Ethan, the man who had saved my life and stolen my answers, who had guarded my freedom so fiercely he forgot freedom required a door I could open myself. No, I said. His eyes came back to mine. Claire, no more decisions without me. The words steadied as I spoke them. No more hidden cars. No more silent payments. No more protecting me like I am still 8 years old in the back seat. He did not move, but something in him went still in a different way. Not control. Hope. Maybe, though he looked afraid to hold it. What do you want? He asked. It was the first real question he had given me. Not an order. Not a warning. A question. I folded the records carefully and tied the blue ribbon back around them with hands that no longer shook. I want the truth to leave this house with me, I said. And I want you to walk beside me, not in front of me. Ethan looked at the bundle, then at me. For the first time that night, he seemed less like a storm and more like a man learning how to put down his weapons without dropping his soul. I can do that, he said. I stepped past the desk, close enough to see the rain caught in his dark hair, close enough to see the regret he had worn for 18 years. I did not forgive him. Not then. Forgiveness was not a door you opened because someone finally knocked. But I reached for the brass key in his palm, and he let me take it without closing his fingers. That mattered. Behind us, the archive door opened, and Nathaniel's voice drifted in smooth as smoke. How touching. I turned with the key in one hand and my mother's records in the other. This time, Ethan did not step in front of me. He stood beside me, exactly where I had asked him to be. Nathaniel Cross stood in the doorway as if he had never lost a room in his life. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his coat still damp at the shoulders, his pale eyes moving from the records in my hand to the brass key resting against my palm. Behind him, Mrs. Vale appeared in the hallway, her face tight with fear she was too disciplined to show. Farther back, the house had gone silent in that strange way expensive houses do when people inside them understand that money cannot soften what is coming. You have no idea what you are holding, Nathaniel said. I almost smiled, though nothing about me felt amused. People keep saying that to me tonight. Ethan did not move in front of me. He stayed beside me, his shoulder level with mine, close enough that I could feel his presence without feeling managed by it. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. Nathaniel looked at him. You would let her walk out with documents she cannot possibly understand. They belong to her, Ethan said. His father's mouth tightened. They belong to this family. No, I said, and my own voice surprised me. It did not shake. They belong to my mother. She left them for me because she knew one day this house would remember my name. Nathaniel's eyes settled on mine, and for the first time, I saw something like uncertainty pass through them. Not fear. Men like him probably named fear something else. Risk. Exposure. Loss of control. Margaret was impulsive, he said. Margaret was brave, I answered. There is a difference men like you always mistake. The room held its breath. Ethan turned his head slightly toward me, and I felt his gaze more than I saw it. Pride, maybe. Pain, too. The kind that comes when someone realizes the person they tried to protect no longer needs to be sheltered from the storm. She has become weather herself. Nathaniel took one step forward, then stopped when Ethan lifted his phone and placed it on the desk. The screen was already lit. A call was active. Mrs. Vale's voice came from the hallway, small but steady. Mr. Cross, the county sheriff has arrived at the south gate, and the federal attorney is on the line. Nathaniel looked at her as if she had become a stranger. Mrs. Vale lowered her eyes, but she did not apologize. Ethan looked at his father. I learned from you that every house has hidden doors. I simply opened different ones. For a moment, no one spoke. Rain tapped against the windows. The old lamp buzzed softly. Somewhere beyond the mansion, tires moved over wet gravel. Closer now, real and ordinary and lawful in a way this house had avoided for too long. Nathaniel's face did not collapse. Men like him did not collapse. They became colder, smaller, less mythical. He looked at me one last time, and the warmth he had pretended earlier was gone. You think truth will save you? I held the records against my chest. No, but it will stop saving you. Ethan exhaled beside me, so quietly I almost missed it. That was the moment I understood. He had spent 18 years building silence around me because he thought silence was mercy. My mother had spent her final courage building proof because she knew truth was the only mercy that could outlive her. The officers did not rush in. There was no dramatic ending, no shattered glass, no chaos. Just footsteps in the hall. Calm voices. Mrs. Vale opening doors that had stayed closed for decades. Nathaniel Cross being escorted from his own archive with his chin raised and his kingdom finally answering to something larger than his name. Ethan did not watch him go. He watched me. You are free to leave. Now, he said. The words were careful. Too careful. As if he was offering me the one thing he had denied me most of all and did not know how to hold his hands while giving it. I looked down at the cream envelope still lying on the desk, the one that had cracked the night open. On the back, beneath the fold, was a final line I had not seen before. Ethan's handwriting, darker than the rest, added years later. She ruled the only part of me the city never touched. My throat tightened. I touched the ink with one finger, then folded the page and placed it with my mother's records. Dawn had begun to thin the windows, turning the rain silver. Outside, the long driveway waited. Beyond it, Boston, my apartment, my old job, my unfinished grief, my life no longer built on locked drawers. Ethan walked me to the front doors without giving an order to anyone. At the threshold, he stopped. Claire, he said. I turned. He looked nothing like the man who had appeared in the archive hours earlier. Still powerful. Still dangerous in the way storms are dangerous. But human now. Breakable. I am sorry, he said. Not because it fixed anything. Not because it earned him forgiveness. Because some truths need to be spoken even when they arrive too late. I nodded once. Then I stepped into the morning with my mother's courage in my hands and his silence finally behind me. For 18 years, he kept me alive from the shadows. But that morning, I learned love is not proven by how tightly someone protects you. Sometimes love begins when they finally let you choose the light.